everyone, and welcome to another TED Talks podcast. And for those of you who are watching me on video, welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed or following me on YouTube, it's TED Talks Property, I believe, and you should find me. So I'm going to talk to you today about why I am so boring. People ask me, Tej, why do you buy buy-to-lets? They're so vanilla, they're so basic. You know, you love interior design. How much can you really do with like buy-to-lets and flips? But also I want to talk through the BRR, which is the buy, refurbish, refinance model. So I am going to start with the, why I buy buy-to-lets and why I'm boring. And then at the end, I'm going to finish off with what BRR is. So those of you who are already doing it, listen to the first part if you like. But if you've done BRRs and you know what they are, then feel free to tune off. This is aimed at people who are beginning in their journey a little bit more. So, buy-to-lets. So, when I say buy-to-lets, I mean, look, most houses that you let out are buy-to-lets technically. But I mean family homes, 2, 3, 4 beds, let out to a family, to a couple, to whatever, on an AST, an assured short hold tenancy, with one, unit in the house who live in the whole house with the garden, everything. So different to a HMO, which is of course, a room by room basis, and a house that's let out room by room, where you rent out just that room and maybe a bathroom where you share the bathroom. Now, for me, buy-to-lets are, there's a lot of legislation that can come in, and the government are doing everything they can to show how much they dislike landlords and tax us, even though we're actually changing the housing market more than the government ever have. Anyways, so HMOs, rent to rent, all these things can face a lot of legislation, especially HMOs, with this like council tax banding that's coming in per room that potentially could spread across the UK like a plague. Buy-to-lets and like single lets are unlikely to have this same sort of legislation because they are just family homes. There's not, the person inside there pays the bills and pays the council tax anyway. So for me, that's one small aspect of why I buy buy-to-lets, but it's part of a bigger thing, which is risk. I want my portfolio to be as passive as possible. Now, we all know, if you're listening to this, that property is not, it's not always super passive. There's always something to do. But of course, with my 2 buy-to-lets, am I working 9 to 5 on them? No. Like, actually, kind of felt a bit like, I felt a bit proud for a second there, because I'm not. I'm doing all, and every month the rent is coming in. Fingers crossed, long may it continue. For me, I want it to be as passive and de-risked as possible. And what that for me means is having to be a bit vanilla. And not in my interior design, but in the strategy I employ. So by buying lots of, because you need lots of buy-to-lets, I'll tell you why in a second, it de-risks me. It allows me to have more ASTs, where in a HMO you got however many contracts, but the humans are all touching each other. And when humans are involved with each other, they can just steal the milk, steal the cheese, problems, right? And also great things can happen as well, but problems, right? For at least that's how you may see it as a landlord. But with these buy-to-lets, I've got separate families and separate houses spread over X many ASTs and X many locations. So my risk, in my opinion, is lower. It's spread out over X many properties. I also have different mortgages on different properties, different locations, different values. Again, my risk is kind of spread a little bit. I haven't got all my fingers in one pie. If one house goes, void or vacant for a little bit of time, yes, I may not make money from it, same as a HMO, but filling a family home in areas that most of us probably invest, we all know it's pretty straightforward. They're in constant demand. So for me, it's about, firstly, de-risking, being as boring as I can, and being as, like I said, passive, because you've got a family in there. They're generally responsible for most things. The roof falls off, the boiler, fine. There's a few bits and bobs, but that's a phone call, to a handyman, or if it's, under a lettings agent, then they can deal with it, and then you pay the bill. So, really, there's just sort of less, in my opinion, that can go wrong and will go wrong, and it's a little bit more passive. I think HMOs can be passive, don't get me wrong. A lot of you listening are going to have HMOs and probably say, Tej, we never do anything. But there's plenty of people who say, HMOs, mate, pain in the arse. And I think there's a lot of people who actually, manage HMOs or their own, or they have HMOs, but maybe they don't realize how much management goes into it because it's natural. Like they're just running their business, and running their business is part of managing that HMO. So when you ask them, they're not hiding it. It's just such a natural part. I'll forget so many things about my daily sort of what I do because it's so natural to me. So, there are differences in the management. So, buy-to-lets, each one, generally speaking, if you're doing your sums, you're doing your research, will probably get you about $250 to $350 a month profit with a lettings agent. If I stop using a lettings agent on mine, which I'm actually doing 2 without, it'll probably net about 310 quid a month. So not huge money, not big compared to a HMO or a big development, but how many of those you need to quit your job? How many of those you need to have financial security? If I look at how many buy-to-lets I have, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8th one in legals. Once all 8 are up and running, which is happening very shortly, once they're generating money, if that's $250 each, what you got to think is, like, okay, that's $250 each. Now, I'm about to do my maths for those on the video. That's $250 times 8, which is £2,000. Now, if they were not a month, and if they were not self-managed, if they were self-managed, looking at about 300 a month, that's 2,400. That's almost the UK average salary or higher. But you're not working for this really, because you do the refurb correctly in the first place, and it shouldn't need much maintenance or physical management of the property. And that's taken me less than 6 months, and I've used very little of my own money, and it's pretty much been investors' money, like some of you who are watching who invested and who are going to invest. So what can I do in the next 6 or 8 to 10 or 12 months? Like buy-to-lets, yes, they're slower. Yes, they bring in a small amount per unit. But if you can grow quickly and you can do it efficiently and properly like a business, then actually they can still bring good money. Now, however, a HMO person is going to say £2,000 a month. That's 2 HMOs for me. And that's fine. And as tempting as they are, unfortunately, where I invest, it's very difficult to do HMO successfully there. There are a few areas where it could work, but I'm at this stage where, because the growth is so quick, I haven't got time to wait for a HMO to be ready or the refurb or anything like that. So, and also the huge outlay of, not a huge outlay, but bigger outlay of cash. So I will do a HMO or 2 in the future because of the benefits that come with it. But generally speaking, my portfolio is going to be quite a few buy-to-lets. And then blocks of flats, because that's literally a buy-to-let on steroids. It's a HMO, but the humans aren't in contact, and there's freeholds, leaseholds, interesting things you can do with that, right? And also it means one building but like 5 kitchens. So I get to design 5 kitchens, which I'm more than happy about. So, for me, buy-to-lets provide that de-risked, as passive as, you'd hope for, kind of return. And yeah, they may take longer. They may give you a little bit of cash flow each. But when you do it in abundance, if you listen to Adam Lawrence, who's been on the podcast, who at the time had 160 properties, I think he has a lot more now, times that by 250, and you've got a pretty nice number. And if you keep buying lots of buy-to-lets, and if you want to, you could set up a lettings agency to then manage your own and be tax efficient, and actually then, if you want, just set up like a lettings agency to help others as well. So there's lots that can come from buy-to-lets, right? And also, I do like the simplicity of them, you haven't got as much legislation as rules as other things. They're a lot quicker. If I had to do development, it would take 8 to 18 months to see profit, and more money, more problems. Biggie said it, right? You do bigger things, there's more risk, there's more challenges, there's more stress, but yeah, the reward is way bigger. But it all depends on what you want from property. And for me, yes, I could wait. Let's say I built a new build, right? And I don't know, let's say it net like 60k profit and it took a year. There's a lot of risks, a lot of challenges with that, building from the ground, right? And actually sometimes caveat that, sometimes it's better because you're not dealing with old mortar walls, you're not dealing with old historic movement, you're kind of doing it afresh. But in those 12 months or so to make that 60 grand, I could have done, 4 flips and made 60 grand with maybe less risk. And it, they could have been done a lot quicker than that. And maybe even easier to find funding in terms of like from private investors because of the risk profile of it. So you know, people say, oh, Tej, you're going to progress into land and all that stuff. Yeah, I'll definitely do a new build because, like, why not? I'd want to design something from scratch. That's why I want to do it, to design stuff. And I will do HMOs and blocks to flats. But for me, buy-to-lets are simple. You know, one could even say they're elegant. You know, and they're as passive as, I think, an asset class you can have in property. So that's why I'm boring. That's why I do buy to lets, or single lets, as I guess I should technically call them. Now, what is BRR? So it is buy, refurbish, refinance. So you buy a house. In order for this to work, well, look, it, generally speaking, has to be below market value. But if you're buying somewhere like London, you know, there may be potential to buy at market value, build an extension, build a dormer, and then actually shoot up the end value, maybe. But just for argument's sake, let's just say you're buying below market value, and I'll go through some figures with you actually on one of my real deals on this. But you buy below market value, you then refurbish it to bring it back up to market value, or even to push. The reason we say refinance is because you've already got it on finance, whether that's your own cash, an investor cash, or a bridge. And the purpose of refinancing it is because now you've increased the market value, you want to then pull some of your money back out, potentially leave some in or leave none in, and then go again. The traditional way is buy a house, 25% deposit or whatever, leave it in, do a refurb, leave that in, and make money because it still makes more than the bank. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Depends on your strategy. But I think a lot of us want to pull money back out to then keep going. And it's like the holy grail, right? It's what property courses talk about. It's what people talk about. Let me talk to the logistics. So when you're buying the house, some courses will just say, yeah, buy the house. Sorry? You need to buy it ideally with a bridge or with cash. You can buy it with a mortgage. However, a mortgage is a 25, 35 year product. If you're going to be then in 6 months remortgaging it, you know, mortgage lenders are not going to like that. I mean, I'm sure you can get away with a few of them, you know, from speaking to my brokers, but then after that, they're not going to be happy and you might be on the blacklist or something. But either way, it's not what the product's for. It's a 25-year product. Yes, it's super cheap, but it can cost you in early redemption charges, that you may have to pay to then end the product early. So actually, it may be cheaper just to bridge it or something. As expensive as it can be, it may be cheaper to bridge it or buy it with cash and pay an investor back. But really, you know, the way I've done it is with investor cash or bridging. That's the first thing to note. You're buying it with investor cash or bridging. Or like investor means family, friends, or whoever, you know, people who are loaning you money. Now, once you've done this, you then refurbish it. Now, I find refurbishment cash is hard to borrow. Bridges can give it, but then they'll pay it in arrears. So you have to have the cash first, pay the builders, and then they come in and pay you. And sometimes they bring a quantity surveyor on site, which costs you money to say, oh, yep, you've done the work, tick, here's more money. And so I haven't really found a good solution institutionally to borrow refurb money, but I've done it using investor funds or, at the beginning, my own funds. Once the refurbishment is done to a high enough standard, now here's the key. If it's a shit refurb or if it's not done too much work, it can be, you know, naturally tricky to prove to the valuer. And it shouldn't be that it's now worth market value. But market value is not based on the work you've done. It's based on, like, does the current state of it equal other things on the market that have sold at the same level? And that's an ideal world, right? Now, what I've heard from brokers and from people is if you remortgage before 6 months, they look at purchase price kind of plus how much you spent on it and then work it out. After 6 months, they look purely at comparables. I'm interested to hear people's experiences with this. But for people who maybe aren't familiar with this, generally speaking, most mortgage lenders have a rule, and it's not actually like, I was reading, it's not actually like a proper strict thing. They just all seem to kind of follow it. That before 6 months, a lot of lenders just won't remortgage when you bought the house. Some will, like Kent Reliance, like Foundation, I think Precise. There might be a few others who do it. They will do it, but obviously with more cost and maybe a higher rate. But it could still work out cheaper. And I'm actually going through an early one at the moment, so I'll let you know what happens with that. But there are ways to remortgage within 6 months, but traditionally you do it after 6 months to get a much wider range of products, lenders, and potentially better rates and maybe free valuations and things like that. So you've done that refurb, and the hardest part really is proving to the valuer that it's worth what you think it is. Because even a 5k down value on like a buy to let, or, you know, depending on, you know, if let's say it's under 100k, and you've had a 5k down value, that can actually affect how much money you're pulling out by quite a bit, because you get 75% of that. And that's a decent chunk of money, right? Depending on your margin. It could be 50k for where you invest, but let's say 5k. You then go to refinance it. I've had a successful refinance so far. It should have been valued at 80k, and it was. We spent 63k all in, or 63,950 all in. We took out 60k, so we left in just under 4 grand, and it nets at the moment. Well, once it's on a mortgage, it will. Well, the mortgage is coming through now. It will net 200 and I think it's 280 pounds a month. I mean, that's pretty good, right? Like, how, 280 pounds a month versus 4 grand left in, it's a very good return on cash left in. And I'm doing this across multiple of my deals. So let me talk through that one. I bought it at 50k. In that current condition, it's probably worth about 60, 65. Spent 6k on it, fixed the damp, new, sort of not new kitchen, but put new kitchen units in, new vinyl, new carpet, modernized it a little bit, fixed the garden, and then it got revalued at 80k. Now, in that example, I wasn't necessarily adding value. What I like to call it is I was re-adding value. I was just bringing it back up to market, because it was almost at market value before. It's just that no one wanted to buy it, and I just got it super cheap. Had I valued that prior to 6 months, maybe it would have been a different story, because they would have been like, you bought it for 50, you spent 5 on it, and you're saying it's worth 80. And it is worth 80, but sometimes it can be difficult to prove that. And that's probably one of the, to be honest, that's probably the biggest challenge, as well as getting refurbs and stuff on time. Proving to valuers is one of those challenges that, like, you just never know until the day and until they give it back. Like, is it going to be what you expected, or is it going to be better? No. So that's how buy, refurbish, refinance works. That's an example of a deal. I mean, I've got another one where I bought at auction for 45 grand. It's a 4-bed. In its condition, it was probably worth, 50 max. It was probably worth. Well, someone had actually bought it for 58k in the same condition 6 months before, so maybe it was worth a bit more actually. But once you got the wallpaper off, you saw the black mortar everywhere and the walls crumbling, it was definitely worth 45. So we spent 17k on that, and that included some external works to get the re-rendering done and fixing a roof leak and basically a total replaster, redecoration, new kitchen, updated bathroom, new carpets throughout. It's a 4-bed, so it's a bit bigger. And the garden was fine. Now, that is worth 85 to 90k all day long, comparables and agents, and actually the one pretty much next door, which I think is a 3-bed, recently sold for 85k. So all day long it's worth 85, 90. I'm trying this out on an early remortgage, but all in all, this should be a deal that doesn't actually leave in much money. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring up my spreadsheet, so I'm gonna talk you through it. So we're in for 45, you've got stamp duty at 1,250, solicitor fees on this one were just under £1,000 is bridging. We spent 17k on it, and my spreadsheet also includes interest, like, to my investor who's funding this deal. This one's a bridge plus investor for deposit, so some of the figures may not exactly add up because of the interest that's coming off. Once it gets revalued, I've put in 85, worst case, it's a 4-bed, it should be 90. I will leave in £4,653. It will rent for £550 a month. Cash flow should be about £320 a month, and that's a return on cash left in of 68%. This is a BRR. Now, yes, I'm leaving in money, and that's fine. I'm leaving in less than 5k, which is my limit. But the way I did this was by buying it at a good price at auction, spending what I need to spend on it to make it up to a good condition for someone to live in. It's going to be someone's home as a rental. And then to prove to the valuer that, look, this is, it's going to be better than the comparables, because it's going to be brand new inside. It's going to be sexy. Newly plastered walls, new nice kitchen, shout out Howdens, to prove to them, look, this is what it's worth. How much money did I put into this deal? 10% on the day of auction deposit, so £4,500 plus the auction fee. It was about 5,100. 75% was funded by a bridger. It was a 2-week completion, so I just said, right, let's bridge it. And then the rest of the deposit, 25%, was funded by an investor, and the refurb was totally funded by an investor. So I put in maybe £8,000 and some time, and this will be a house that pulls everything out and leaves in £5,000. Now you're going to ask, hold on a minute, Tej, you owe your investor or your bridger or yourself 5 grand. Indeed I do. So what do? I flip houses to generate cash, to literally make cash, to then pay my investors back. You know, I don't take profit from the flips. I'd love to take profit from them, right? But I don't. I use them to pay off my investors because money is still left in some of these deals. So that's BRR. And obviously before that is like why I buy buy-to-lets. And also buy-to-lets, you know, you can rinse and repeat and you can recycle your money with the BRR model that yes, you can do on HMOs. Yes, you can do on anything else. But of course, you know, I've chosen to do buy-to-lets. So I hope this explains to everyone, you know, why I buy buy-to-lets and what the BRR model is. A lot of people have been asking me to explain it. And I do apologize if you know what it is and, well, hopefully you haven't listened this far. But either way, hopefully a nice reminder for you. If you have any questions, pop me a message. And just to let you all know, my Earn and Learn program is still active. I'm still looking at funding deals for 2020. I'm looking to buy 3 buy-to-lets a month for the first 6 months and sort of 1 flip every 2 months, 1 or 2 flips every month. So if you want to get involved, if you want to learn more and have access to my exclusive library of videos and content and the WhatsApp group and my beginners pack and access to me properly, then please let me know and we can talk about the Earn and Learn. If you want more information on it in the meantime, it's tejinvests.com. Thank you very much, everyone.